All right, everybody, welcome to Wellness Wednesday. We are so glad that you are here. And I have a very special treat for you today. I am joined by Leanna Henning, and Leanna is the owner of my favorite yoga studio in the amazing Lawrence, Kansas. So many of you get to hear about this amazing place I live, Lawrence, Kansas. And she is the founder and owner of Yellow Brick Yoga right here in Lawrence. And so, Leanna, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We're so
Yes.
appreciative of the time.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for asking me to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Leanna, the reason that I wanted to meet with you is because, I have had many different yoga instructors over the years. I've been to a lot of different studios, and yet I can always tell the difference between the people that are just, leading a class and the people who embody yoga, that this is like their way of life. And you're definitely somebody that I would say falls into that second category. It just seems like this is so much of who you are, this practice. And I'm curious, what or how did you get led to yoga? What led you to this practice?
Yeah, thank you for asking me. I have been on this journey and in this practice now for 23 years. So it's pretty awesome. I was a young woman when I was drawn to this practice, and I was really fortunate. I am really fortunate to have an aunt on my mom's side who has been a yoga teacher in Kansas City for probably 40 years now. And so, yeah, around that time in my life, I had just come up here to Lawrence to start college, and I was going through loss at the time. I had my aunt had lost her sister, and I had lost my aunt, and I felt really lost. I had been raised in the Catholic Church, and I'd always gone to Catholic school, and so I had a lot of questions around my relationship with spirit and with divine, and so my aunt started planting little seeds for me. She would. This was. Rewind a little bit. This was back in the day. So she would send me books, and she sent me a VHS tape that really landed for me. And that was a Baron Baptiste asana practice, which asana is the physical portion of practice. Meanwhile, at the time, she was also inviting me to go on retreats with her. And she is initiated in the Kriya Yoga lineage. And so, Kriya Yoga, in that experience as a younger woman, I had the opportunity to be able to sit and to learn the teachings of Kriya Yoga, which is the yoga, if I were to simplify it, this is the yoga of action, of being intentional and volitional with our actions. And here I was, a very young woman, really confused, I felt like, about a lot of things. And I found that studying the philosophies of yoga, and then I also found that VHS tape of Baron Baptiste, asana portion of yoga. I found that to be a wonderful mix that just really turned me on to the possibilities, and really in a place that was very dark for me, was a little bit of that light that was shining through. That's how I got into it, and the Baptiste yoga lineage is a challenging one. You've been in class with me before. You know that it's a physically demanding practice, and I think for me at the time that was something that I really needed. I'll never forget the first time that I was in a high plank push up, and I was holding it, and I'd watched the video, and my ego self had said, "Oh yeah, I can do this. I got this." And then here I am in that high plank, and I'm holding it, and then I notice that there's some struggle there, and so I'm trying to breathe and everything, and I got very present to what I call are the chips that I was carrying around on my shoulders. I got very present to the kind of weight that I was carrying, and that kind of a shield of armor that I was wearing. And maybe at one point in time it had served me really well, but now where I found myself then, it didn't serve me so well anymore. And so that was really my way. And I'd started to just dedicate myself to reading and to studying. I was actually pretty private about it early on, because guess what? Yoga wasn't very popular back then.
Hmm.
My friends weren't doing that. I had a lot of other unhealthy habits. I like to talk about habits a lot. And so I had a lot of other unhealthy habits that, as soon as I started picking up the practices of yoga, I started to really become more present to what was serving me and what was no longer serving me. And that was really the beginning of something that catapulted me to New York City. I moved to New York because I wanted to study with Baron Baptiste. I wanted to train with him. I wanted to train with the best of the best. And I wanted to put myself in a place where I knew that would have that opportunity.
Mm. Wow. So how long were you in New York?
I was in New York for 8 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then you came back to Lawrence. And when did you actually start Yellow Brick?
Yeah, so we just had our 6 year anniversary here. So we're just coming up, starting on our 7th year.
Good for you. Good for you.
Hmm.
And
Thank you.
one of the things that you'll notice about Leanna is that she drops these little dimes like, I got very present to the chips on my shoulder. She says stuff like this, and you'll hear it in class too. It's really cool. And there was one in particular that I think you said this about a month ago. It might have been 6 weeks ago. But you said doing the work is the shortcut. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what you mean by that? Doing the work is the shortcut.
Absolutely. Um, I think that we all know in our own way what that means. But when you're trying to sneak around, right? Like, when you're trying to maybe skip a step along the way. I look for that a lot on the yoga mat. So there is no shortcut. This is the big newsflash, right? There is no shortcut to doing the work consistently, with duration, over
Hmm.
time. Um, this is it. But internally, right, we're always sort of looking for maybe that easier way sometimes, right? Especially when things are harder.
Hmm.
So this is a phrase that has been emblazed, and that comes up for me. It was a phrase that my teacher in New York City, Bethany Lyons, used to use all the time. So really, I'm just a culmination of all of the teachers that have come before me. I have immense gratitude for all of those that I practice with. But I'm always looking for those places where I'm trying to take a shortcut or skip a step. And when I notice that I'm doing that, the key is to be aware of it, to take a step back and remind myself that being in the work, this is the place where I'm really going to grow.
Yeah. Wow. So it seems like, there's a deep sense of awareness about you, right? And that seems to be the real magic of what yoga has done for you.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing that you've said, or I've heard you say in class, is how you enter and exit a pose or a posture is symbolic of how you enter and exit moments in your life. What does that mean?
Absolutely. There is what we're looking for in the asana is to be stable and to be comfortable. And what we're looking for is to invite in ease. And I would say that we're looking for that in our lives off of the mat as well. And so, as we're coming up into a posture, are we approaching it from a place of like clenched fists, clenched jaw? Like, are we approaching it from, I can't wait for this to be over, like going into the future? Or breath by breath and moment by moment, can we be in the flow? And that's what we're really, looking for. And I find that when we can establish ourselves in this way of being, of open to receiving, right? Here I am open to receiving this posture or this breath, or maybe you're asked to do something in a way that you've never done it before, right? Can I invite in ease in this? Listen, transitions are hard, right? How we move through transitions. What do we do when we move through a transition? Do we, cut short? Do we run away? Or can we stay? And so this is part of what we're learning on the yoga mat is how to practice discernment, you
Mm,
know. And so a lot of that I feel like comes up, yeah, in our approach. Am I inviting in ease in this moment? Am I open to ease in this moment? So
yeah.
yeah, how we're moving through, it's so the way that people move on the mat to me, and I've been doing this for a long time, but I can learn a lot about a person by how they move, how they are in the asana, in the pose, and also how they enter and how they come out of the posture as well. Um,
Man, those are some really great questions, Leanna. Can I invite ease into this?
mhm, mhm,
And, a big part of our work here at My Freed Life, and many of the audience, you've probably heard me say this, but there's a quote from Carl Jung, and he said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate.
mhm,
And, when you think about moments of struggle, whether that's on the mat or it's in business, or maybe it's with, your kid, and asking the question, can I invite ease into this? And then there's maybe going to be a part of you that says, no, I can't, And that
mhm,
I would think that that question could then lead to further examination. What is the part of me that has to hold on to this as hard or as a struggle? And
mhm,
that examination of your unconscious and maybe some of the belief structures that you bring into the world of yoga or even into the world of your business or your kids, right?
absolutely. Yeah, there's another quote there that I love by Carl Jung that you might have heard me say too, which is the same thing. What you resist persists,
Hmm. Yep.
and until you confront it head on. And yeah, so much of how we show up is about maybe what has happened to us previously. And for sure, it's a kind of a practice of bringing it to the surface. And a lot of the times I think about the element of water as we're moving through a practice like vinyasa, where the postures flow from one to the next. Ease is there, right? The water will go to the lowest point, right? But where am I putting up a barrier or a block?
Mm, yeah.
Right? If I can't invite in ease in this moment, why? What is that barrier that I'm putting up? Because it's there, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
there.
Right. And the awareness is what allows you to create the examination. You're observing this, right? You're observing the resistance to what is, and yet then it's the ability to question and examine that part of you until you ultimately land at an answer. And I think that there's so much of what yoga has taught me is that you'll quickly uncover your program and the mind as soon as you slip out of your comfort zone.
Mhm,
And I would imagine for most people, it's been their experience. Yoga is very uncomfortable for me, at least physically, right? I have very tight hips and different things that make it uncomfortable, but I think it's probably hard for everybody. And the thing I love so much about it is just like what you're talking about, everything from how do I look to other people while I'm doing this? Like, am I able to hold downward dog as well as the next person? And so it's like, well, whose mind are you living in? It's like this gigantic experiment, isn't it? And I
mhm,
bet you have such a unique perspective on all of that from watching people work through this practice. That's so
mhm.
cool. So,
Absolutely. It really is like that. It's like a big experiment. And, there's an acknowledgement that yes, it's uncomfortable. and you've intentionally placed yourself in a position where there may be some uncomfortableness, there may be some discomfort. And what do we do in that space? What do you do in that space of discomfort?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? Mhm.
So I'm curious, Leanna, like people who find themselves in that space of discomfort, or you can see someone like me, maybe who's struggling on the mat. What encouragement would you offer people? Or if you had the ability to like inject a thought right into their head, what might that be?
That's a really great question. I think that it's different for each person. I think that we all have our own inner critic,
Mm,
and it has a voice, right? And each one of our inner critics says something different. So I oftentimes, Jordan, wish that I had the right thing to say for everybody.
yeah.
But I don't, you know. It really is a practice of devotion, to oneself, right? Through oneself, to oneself. And so I'll bring up a lot of inquiry. I'll ask a lot of questions. And that's part of one of the things that I do in order to help lead people to their own self discovery.
Hmm.
Because I don't have the answers, right? Like the answers are already within. I think it's really important. And what I try to do is acknowledge, sometimes there's really physical expressions to what that inner critic may look like, right? And so oftentimes I will try to maybe come nearer to that person, put my physically to let them know that I'm there for them. I will offer them my eye contact. I will usually offer them a smile, and I will usually offer words of affirmation into the space as well. You've probably heard me say before, I can do hard things.
Yep.
This is the same affirmation as I would give to my son. Honestly, when we're learning to do something new and we're recognizing that it's challenging, and, maybe the inner critic isn't being so nice in that moment, I would offer kindness and compassion to self. You'll hear me say that over and over again, because if we can be compassionate to self first, if I can become aware, oh, that voice that's talking into my head, it's not saying nice things.
Hmm.
A lot of the times, and I think sometimes it gets distorted in the sort of new agey spiritual science. What we want to be really cautious of is that we're not practicing toxic positivity, right? It's very important to acknowledge that inner critic and acknowledge that inner voice. And if I could give a tool, from the texts and from the teaching of yoga, is that we can actually, from that place of awareness, we can choose the opposite thought form, and we can insert that opposite thought form and then rewire our brains, right? Now
Hmm.
it's gonna take a little time. It's gonna take consistency. You're gonna need to do that for several days in a row. But over time, you start to develop new neurotransmissions, new firing, and you'll find, little bit by little bit, a bit of a shift
Yep.
in how you perceive yourself in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so foundational to what we teach, because when inevitably I'm coaching an entrepreneur or somebody that gets to a fork in the road, and it's not my job to cheerlead people. It's not my job to tell them like, oh my gosh, look at how far you've come and all these things. Inevitably, as you mentioned, the answers have to come from within, and I think that good coaches are people who give tools to people, but the tools are there to mine the wisdom of their head and their heart.
Mhm.
And, like what you just said, if we're talking about the conversion of inner critic to inner coach, and how does that conversion actually happen? And what you said was the opposite thought form. One of the great tools that we've developed that help people with this is like, are you coaching yourself the same way you would coach a child? or your child, if they found themselves in the same circumstance, right? This is hard. I'm not sure if I can do it. What would you talk to them as an inner critic, or would you talk to them as an inner coach? And for the vast majority of us, we're going to say coach, right? And the
Mhm.
reason is not because we seek to coddle them. That's not the reason. What we find is that abuse does not actually incite performance.
Mhm.
And I think that that's such a fundamental lesson that everybody here today, if you could take that out of this conversation, and like she's saying, in those moments that your inner critic really just seeks to beat the shit out of you, just slow it down a little bit and simply ask yourself, if it were my kid, if it were somebody I love, what would the personal podcast sound like right now? What would I say to them? And what might happen in my life? What possibilities could potentially open up if I would just treat myself with the same respect and grace? So
Mhm.
I love what you just said. I think that's absolutely amazing. Um, so Leanna, you know, another thing that I've heard you say is like this idea of like, get to your edge and breathe. And one of the things that I think helps us breathe a little bit easier in this world, and there are things that happen that are good and things that happen as bad. A lot of that's open to interpretation, and yet gratitude, right? Something that seems to allow us to breathe much easier is gratitude. I'm curious, like, what 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 has the role of gratitude played in your life, or how do you use gratitude in the practice of yoga?
Mhm. Gratitude, honestly, in my earlier days of practicing, what I noticed was I started to become more forgiving as a person. And so we're never an island, right? And so what started happening for me was that I needed to go out into my relationships with other people. And in some cases, I need to say, I'm sorry,
Hmm.
and start to work towards forgiveness. And I started to notice then that I was becoming a little bit more aware of maybe people that I had had maybe conflict with in the past. And upon resolving the conflict, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for allowing that to happen, but also all of that needed to happen in order for us to get to where we are now. Um, Now here's the cool thing. Like I said, I really love habits, and I really love to, yoga is a practice, right? And for me, I hear a lot of people say, gratitude is an attitude. But for me, gratitude, and I encourage everyone, and this is why I'm so excited to be here and to talk with y'all, because gratitude for me has been really life changing, and I've taken it on as a practice, right?
Hmm.
So it starts from honestly, it starts from the very beginning of my day. When my eyes open, the very first thing, the habit that I'm into is smiling and greeting the day with a smile. And that is really the habit that then brings me into the practice of gratitude. And I'm in that habit of beginning my day, cultivating a practice of gratitude. And it could be, depending on the day, I could have 1 minute, I could have 30 minutes to sit and be in a gratitude meditation. But no question about it, from the very beginning of my day, this is the place that I'm choosing to live my life from. I'm choosing to live my life from a place of gratitude because, well, the byproduct of that for me is presence,
Hmm.
right? Gratitude is a way towards happiness. And so this is one of the greatest things. And I start I think I start every Monday morning practice here at Yellow Brick Yoga with the practice of gratitude here in the space as well. We share gratitudes. I had someone just reach out to me and say, "Thank you so much. I've been struggling with the practice of gratitude," and having someone to mirror back and to actually put that language out into the space, to put that vibration out. And this is a person who's going through a lot of grievance right now. And he
Mhm.
said, that changed for me. That created a shift inside of me. And so I'm passionate about it because as I look around and I see everybody walking around, I think, golly, are you practicing gratitude? Are you aware of how amazing you are? Are you aware of how amazing it is that we exist here and now, that you're breathing in this body on this spinning rock moving around the universe? It's amazing. And so, in this way, it is a practice. And I encourage it as a practice. And as anything with a practice, we start small.
Yeah.
And small things over time stacked up create something big. So it's a simple little thing that has an immense value. It has an immense, you have, it has unlimited potential. There's unlimited possibilities in the practice of gratitude. So I want everybody to practice it.
Yeah. That's so good, Leanna. That's so good. And everybody here knows what my favorite practice for gratitude is. If you don't, I'm going to give you a huge favor here. I ripped it off from my all-time favorite book, Tools of Titans, and it's the Awesome Jar. So if you don't have an Awesome Jar, do yourself a favor, go get a big mason jar and put it in your kitchen somewhere that your kids can get access to it as well. And every time something awesome happens, just write it down, date it, and drop it in the jar. And Leanna, we've been doing this now for like probably 7 years, and it sits in the kitchen at my house. And inevitably, every 3 to 4 months, my kids, like, we've never taken any of them out. They've all just culminated there for the last 7 years. And it's so cool because randomly one of my kids will open it and they'll just start pulling them out and reading them. And I've shared this with the audience before, but it's so cool that there's so many of those moments that we wrote down that had I not written them down
Mhm.
as an expression of gratitude in that moment and put them in that jar, I would have completely forgot that they ever happened.
Yeah.
And so the awesome jar, if you're looking for, as she mentioned, a small way to start, and it doesn't mean you have to put 3 in every day, like, just look for the awesome, write it down and drop it in the jar. So really great stuff, Leanna. I know that we wanted to wrap today up with you guiding us through a gratitude meditation. And so I'm going to hand the reins over to you. And I would love it if you could walk us all through a gratitude meditation to wrap this up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you for your time. And for those of you who are joining us here, if you're comfortable with sitting up for the next couple of minutes, just take a nice long spine, uncross your legs, let your feet ground down into the floor. And if it feels okay for you to close down your eyes here, you can close down your eyes or you can just allow your eyelids to become heavy. And we'll start with the floor and giving gratitude to the earth underneath you. Notice how you're met by the earth right where you are. Notice the support that you have right where you are. Notice the firmness of your bones and gratitude for your bones, the denseness of your bones. And from the very most inner layer of you, noticing here and sending gratitude out from the inside all the way out to the outermost layer of your being. And just allow yourself to land here in this space for a moment. And notice your breath and send gratitude to this breath. This is my in breath coming in, and this is my out breath leaving. And getting the sense of the space within you from the firm to the soft. And taking this moment to say thank you. Thank you to the earth for supporting you. Thank you to this body for being you. Thank you to this breath for moving through you with ease, with lightness, with joy, with wonder. I'm sending gratitude here for just this moment, just this very moment that you're alive and embodied and well. And let's take a nice breath in and send the crown of the head all the way up, noticing the whole length of your spine, noticing the space within you and around you. And then open your mouth and relax your face, your jaw, your tongue. And we'll do that one more time here together. I'll do it with you. Take a deep breath in. And then open your mouth and let it release. If your eyes are closed, you can slowly begin to flutter open the eyes. And this practice of being grateful for what is just right here in the moment, that you are alive and well. This is a wonderful place to start.
So good. Every time I see you, Leanna, I feel better.
I'll remember that when we're holding chaturanga for a
No,
while.
that'll I mean, when I leave, not, not the whole time, but yeah. But thank you, and thank you for not only investing your time, but the work that you do in the world matters, and I know we're all better for it. And we so appreciate you being willing to sit here and pour into our community. And so I can't say it enough. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Jordan. It's wonderful to have you in practice. One of the great gifts that I get to receive is I get to watch people as they grow, right, and as they evolve. And that's something that I get to be a witness to you and to all of my other students. And I am 100% here for it. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll keep showing up. And when we start having our My Freed Life retreats in Lawrence, we're going to talk Leanna into leading a yoga session for all of us. So for those of you that come to Lawrence for those sessions, you're going to get to see her in real person. So, but you guys, I trust that you got a lot out of this, and thank you for being here for Wellness Wednesday. We will be back next week, same day, same time, 7:30 Central. Until then, make sure that you live freed. Thank you all. Bye bye.